But all right, hey, I've been teasing this for a little while here. Just wanted to give my thoughts on SEC Coach of the Year. And I got five candidates. These are the guys that, by the end of the regular season, these are the guys that I think are most deserving for recognition for Coach of the Year. I'm going to run through each one of these, the pros, the cons. And, at the end of the day, this is a very subjective ranking. You could go almost any of these guys, and I would not have a complaint with any of them winning it. But I'm going to give you again my pros and cons for each of them, and ultimately who I would vote for SEC Coach of the Year. And first on the docket here, Kirby Smart, Georgia Bulldogs. I think the list has to start with Kirby. The case for Kirby, well, they've been dominant in a year of college football where we got Alabama getting tested left and right. Ohio State's lost two games. Outside of Cincinnati, who don't play anybody, I don't believe there's another undefeated team out there. There may be one at like Sun Belt or some stupid conference like that, but it's Georgia, and basically every single buddy else is a mile down from them Georgia Bulldogs. And that comes after, we all thought JT Daniels was a savior. This is the answer. This is the guy that's going to put Georgia over the top. Last season, came out red hot, 4 games there, just totally revolutionized the Georgia offense. And then he gets hurt. He's been banged up most of the year. The big game he played, Clemson, it was later revealed he was injured in that game. And he's been basically sidelined ever since, more or less. And we've had to go to the bench and get Stetson Bennett, a guy that, if Georgia fans are being honest with you, they were ready to move on from him. If you would have told Georgia in the offseason Stetson Bennett's going to be their guy that's starting most of the year, they would have said, my God, Florida's going to win the East again because Stetson can't get it done. And how much criticism, from myself included, has Kirby faced for his handling of the situation, not getting JT Daniels ready to play when he had the option. Stetson Bennett, is he really going to be your guy? Well, hell, Stetson Bennett's made huge strides. The offense is very, very efficient. There in Athens, it's no longer a question mark. They are one of the best offenses in the country. And that goes along. I didn't even mention the defense yet. We all know this literally might be the best defense of all time. I mean, they are just stifling people, and that's Kirby's side of the ball. In addition to, JT Daniels being injured, we've had George Pickens. He's played 1 game. He's had 1 catch. Don Blaylock, he's gotten hurt. Jermaine Burton, Kearis Jackson, Kendall Milton, all those guys have missed time. Adam Anderson, he's been out. Tyke Smith, he's out for the year. Eric Gilbert, remember how big of a deal that was? He's not even played a damn down yet for the Georgia Bulldogs. Jalen Kimber, season-ending injury. Usually when I ring off a list like that, I'm saying these names, it's like, well, this is why we went 8-4 this year. This is why we went 7-5. That's why this side of the ball has been a disaster. It's been nothing but. It's been a complete opposite of a disaster down there in Athens. I mean, since the opener, which was a 10-3 win over Clemson on a neutral field, the next closest game Georgia has faced is a 24-point win at Auburn. And this wasn't crumbling Auburn. This was Auburn playing their best football of the season. They still went on the Plains, beat them by 24. Hell, we just saw Alabama took 4 overtimes to beat Auburn on the Plains. Georgia's averaged 40 points a game in SEC play, and they're allowing just over 8 points in SEC play. That's a resume right there of a SEC Coach of the Year. Now, cases against Kirby, I think these are valid. Georgia, arguably the most talented team in the country, and I've been the guy all offseason saying this is the team that's going to win the East. They're going to win the SEC. They're going to win the national championship. So, in a sense, they just kind of lived up to what I thought they'd be, even though a little bit better on offense with Stetson Bennett in there. I thought maybe they'd be doing this with JT Daniels, but maybe you dock Kirby a little bit because this is what he's supposed to be doing with this type of roster. I don't see Ohio State doing it, though. I don't see Alabama doing it. I heard they were going to do it. Texas, where they at? They're in the damn dump. So having the talent alone, LSU, Texas A&M, same deal. They may not have as good a roster as Georgia, but they ain't far off, and they are far off when you look at the results on the field. Another case made against Kirby, perhaps, schedule. Not as daunting, being in the SEC, of course. really only played 2 road games, if we're being honest with ourselves, at Auburn and at Tennessee. The other away games, if you can call them that, Charlotte for the Clemson game, Jacksonville for the Florida game, and then at Vanderbilt and at Georgia Tech. They may not be between the hedges, but it was not a hostile environment. I can guarantee you that. So those were the cases against Kirby winning SEC Coach of the Year. Now, how about Sam Pittman from Arkansas? I mean, you got to put him on the list, right? 8-4 in year 2 of his program, and you got to remember. I mean, this was a damn. They were Vanderbilt of the SEC, literally. I mean, they were that bad. They may have been worse. That's how god awful Arkansas was just 2 years ago. Now, like I said, year 2, 8-4. Many were saying this was the toughest schedule in the country. You got Texas on the schedule, including only, 3 home games in SEC play in Razorback Stadium. My God, how many coaches would have went 8-4 under that? Not that many. He snapped several streaks this year. Texas A&M, 9-game streak, snapped. LSU, 5-game streak, snapped. Missouri, 5-game streak, snapped. Arkansas, some streak snappers this year, if you want to call them that. And, Sam Pittman gets credit for leading the charge there. How about this? They own all the rivalry trophies. We kind of made a big deal about that from same teams, A&M, LSU, and Mizzou. Those are all trophy games. This is the first time Arkansas has held all 3 of those at the same time. That's a hell of a job right there. Destroyed Texas. I know some people probably roll their eyes at this point saying, who in the hell cares? Texas sucks. Very, very few people picking Arkansas to beat Texas. I don't know who. I think, one doofus podcast guy did. But beyond that, not a lot of people outside the state of Arkansas were picking the Razorbacks to beat Texas. And not only they beat them, they whooped the hell out of them. I mean, they just completely dominated. They basically ruined Texas's bubble. Sarkisian was up for coach. Someone put him up for damn Coach of the Year. I don't know if you saw that, but I don't know if he's won a damn game after this Arkansas game. They spanked him that bad. So that you got to get a ton of credit for. People just maybe don't understand that rivalry between Texas and Arkansas and just how big of a deal that was to the Razorback Nation to get that win at home, year 2. This is a game fans have been waiting and waiting and waiting for, and they just pantsed them on national television. The offense took a huge step. Man, there was a lot of people didn't think KJ Jefferson, hell, 24/7 Sports had KJ Jefferson as the 14th best quarterback in the SEC. Oh, God, that's so stupid. But the offensive line took strides this year. I'm just saying, the offense took a big step, and the defense, Barry Odom's unit they've had, some highs and highs, but they also had some lows in year 1. They've been far more consistent this season. That's also a good thing. And of course, I mentioned the offensive line. I think that's been night and day different under Sam Pittman this season. And of course, we know that's his baby there. So I give him credit for that more than just about anybody. Now, the case against Sam Pittman, bad home loss to Auburn. He admitted after that when he got out-coached by Brian Harsin, and you just can't have Bo Nix come in there and rip you apart like he did. Arkansas had opportunities to win that football game, kept making mistakes. Turnovers were paramount. Some missed penalties. There was a lot of things wrong with that game, but at the end of the day, you gotta get it done at home against Auburn. That's a tough one for me to overlook. You went to Georgia, you got outclassed. There was a college game day that was game of the week. This was Arkansas's opportunity to showcase to the rest of the country that they're back on the national stage, and they got goose-egged. 37-0, I think, was the final score. Now, Georgia's whipped the hell out of everybody, so I don't dock you too much for that, but at the same time, you got to keep it competitive, I think, if you're going to be Coach of the Year, in my mind. You lost to Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin, who we'll get to in a minute, but he's on this list. And I know that game was on the road. It came down to the final play. So, again, I don't dock you too much for that, but it's still somewhat of a negative. And then how about this? Only one true road game, and that was at LSU in overtime after they fired their coach. Not trying to make excuses here, but I think Coach of the Year has got to win more than one game on the road in the SEC. Next coach considered, Lane Kiffin, Ole Miss. The case for Lane Kiffin, of course, first 10-win regular season in school history. I mean, that is outstanding. Won the Egg Bowl in Starkville. That's a lot harder than it may sound here for fans that know this rivalry. Going down to Starkville with those cowbells on Thanksgiving. You know, that game is the Super Bowl of the state of Mississippi, and Lane Kiffin won it yet again. Won in Knoxville. Tennessee was pretty hot at that time, and we all remember how incredibly hostile that crowd was. We got to give Lane Kiffin credit for keeping his team's composure, and that scene could have got even uglier if he didn't have control of his team. That was not Ole Miss's fault, aside from the fake injuries, but the refs. It was really directed at the refs more than anything, but. Hey, they kept their composure on the road, got that win after the 20-minute delay, so we got to give them props for that. Matt Corral, of course, got banged up this season, yet they continued to win. Top 3 receivers were at one point or another down and out for games in the SEC, overcame that. Several offensive linemen were down during the SEC schedule. And how about this? Probably the biggest thing that gets overlooked there in Oxford. The defense, no longer a joke. I mean, they're no longer a liability. I mean, they, against Tennessee, against Mississippi State, they had several games here where they stood up. The opener in Louisville, they were outstanding. This defense, it's not one of the best in the SEC. I'm not going crazy here, but they were one of the worst units in the entire country, and now at times they were a strength. So we give Lane Kiffin credit for having his defense make that big turnaround. Now, the case against Lane Kiffin, we all love going for 4th down and going for 2 and all this craziness, but he got too aggressive at times. I think, that really blew up in his face, particularly against Alabama. Couldn't punch it in there a couple times in the red zone, and some of the going for it on 4th down, being able to not get it, that plagued him all season, really. I mean, even in the Egg Bowl, gave Mississippi State some momentum early. I just didn't like. There's aggressive. There's a fine line between too aggressive and being aggressive enough. He was too aggressive, I thought, at times this year, and it really blew up in his face there in the Alabama game. They weren't great in the red zone either. He's supposed to be this fabulous play caller, which he is. He's got this outstanding quarterback, should be a Heisman finalist, yet they were 12th in the SEC in scoring efficiency in the red zone. So, I don't know, that hurts. And then, I don't know how much this is Lane Kiffin to blame, but the fake injuries, I just can't get over that. I mean, if he was totally against that, he could end it. He could get them to stop faking the injuries, but I think he's coaching them to do it. So you got announcers week in and week out saying, this is an issue. You got opposing coaches coming out here and saying this is an issue. We got to have this addressed. And they will address it in the offseason. So anytime they make up a rule to stop what you're doing, I don't know if I can give you Coach of the Year based on that. All right, how about the case for Josh Heupel, Tennessee? 4 games better this season than they were last season. Let's throw up this graphic from the SID down there in Tennessee. Bill Martin did a good job with this, but Tennessee, like I said, 4 games better than they were last year, and the only Power 5 first-year coach that can match that, Shane Beamer at South Carolina. Biggest turnaround among first-year FBS coaches. And, so why the edge over Heupel? Well, he just beat the hell out of South Carolina in the Gamecocks. And that was a game most people had as a toss-up going into the season. Tennessee was favored in that game, but just walloped them. Tennessee outscored South Carolina, Missouri, and Vanderbilt 152-65. And hey, I know that's probably not going to sound that impressive. Again, South Carolina, Missouri, and Vandy, but these were the teams that everybody was grouping Tennessee in with this going into the season. Now, I didn't necessarily have it that way, but the vast majority of people did. One at Missouri, one at Kentucky, 2-2 on the road in his first season at Tennessee. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. And obviously the biggest thing with Josh Heupel, the offense went from unwatchable to can't miss in one single offseason. Hendon Hooker, he made him a star. Cedric Tillman, one of the more productive receivers in the SEC. That guy was basically nothing before this. I think he had 7 career catches. Now he's 1,000-yard receiver, I believe, or he's just a few yards short of being a 1,000-yard receiver. He's Tennessee's best receiver now. And after losing Eric Gray, Ty Chandler, the running game didn't take a hit. I mean, they were more explosive than ever. So Josh Heupel gets a ton of credit for that. And we have such short-term memory. You got to remember that, I poke fun of all the ESPN and CBS for their graphics and stuff, but Tennessee was really ravaged by the transfer portal. I saw Barrett Sallee, who I think he does a great job. I don't mean to poke fun of him, but he said Tennessee won't go to a bowl game for 5 years based on all these losses. And he wasn't alone. A lot of people thought this was basically, NCAA sanction without an NCAA sanction with all the guys they had lost. So, hey, he overcame that. I thought that was impressive. And, one thing that can't be lost, I know he's not the defensive coordinator, but I thought the defense played above their head for most of the season. We thought this would be one of the worst units in the SEC. And, they were average most of the time, but really good tackles for loss, forcing turnovers. They played above their heads, and they don't have any depth whatsoever. A lot of key guys there for the Vols who have never had to play significant minutes. Now they're starters and they're key players. So, again, that is a credit to Josh Heupel. Now, the case against Heupel started Joe Milton to start the year. I cannot get over that. Still to this day, no idea what in the hell he was thinking with that. Now, we give him a little bit of credit for pulling the plug and going with Hendon Hooker, obviously, for the after the Pitt game. But hell, that may have cost you the Pitt game by starting Joe Milton and all his overthrows. And so I hold that against him. Now, it basically took an injury to Joe Milton to get Hendon Hooker in there too. So, you can make that case. Not a great home record for Josh Heupel this year. Lost to Pitt, lost to Ole Miss, lost to Georgia. Again, don't really hold much against him for losing to Georgia. Georgia's so damn good this year that, they're going to run through whoever they face. But could have won that Ole Miss game, should have won that Pitt game, in my opinion. These are the games you got to win, particularly if you're going to be SEC Coach of the Year. And at the end of the day, I've made this point before, in the SEC, all he did is he beat Missouri, South Carolina, Kentucky, and Vanderbilt. I don't think that's good enough, in my opinion, to be winning SEC Coach of the Year. Now, last, Mike Leach, Mississippi State. I know the season kind of ended on a dud there, but hell, again, one of the most improved teams in the SEC. Mississippi State went from 4-7 to 7-5 this year with one of the youngest rosters in the SEC. Several wins over ranked opponents: NC State, Texas A&M, Kentucky, and Auburn. By the time they were beating all those teams, they were all ranked, and I think that's right at the top 4 wins over ranked teams. I don't know if anyone else has done that this year. And how about this? Again, very hard to remember. We got short-term memories, but Will Rogers, he was a question mark to start the season. There was a guy they brought in, Jack Abram, I think his name was, Southern Miss. I mean, this was a quarterback battle. What? With Jack Abram? Who the hell's that? Now, on the other side, Will Rogers, one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the entire country. Now, that's somewhat to be expected with this system, but hey, it's not like flipping a switch, because Will Rogers was not very good at this time last year. He was pretty average. Now he's elite. So we got to give Mike Leach credit for that, getting the most out of his quarterback yet again. Wins at A&M, at Auburn, a 3-2 road record. Mississippi State, that is one hell of a coaching job. And the defense remained one of the SEC's most underrated units. So that's the case for Leach. What about the case against? Lost the Egg Bowl at home. It's hard to be SEC Coach of the Year. You lose your key game there. You lost to Memphis. I know it's horrible officiating, but you get a loss there. Special teams were an issue for the Bulldogs, and you lost 3 home games. LSU probably should have won that. Already mentioned the Ole Miss. And then you lost to Alabama. That's forgivable, but you lost by 40 points. And again, this is an Alabama team that nearly lost to Arkansas, LSU, Auburn, and Tennessee gave them a run for their money. So losing by 40, it's tough to overlook. It really is. So I just spieled on quite a bit there. Who am I voting? Giving the for and against there for those SEC coaches. I'm giving my vote to Kirby Smart. I think it's the year. And it just goes back to what I said. I mean, it's Georgia and it's everybody else. I don't think, there's not been a team that's come, even to Clemson, even though that was the final score was close. There was never any doubt that Clemson was, there was never any danger, I thought, of Clemson winning that football game. And Georgia basically broke them. And again, this is a Georgia team that's had so many injuries, but it's not affected the team whatsoever. There's been no letdown. They are just stampeding into the SEC championship. And if they beat Alabama, they're going to go on and they're going to win the national championship. Hell, even if they lose to Alabama, they're probably still going to go on and win the national championship. So my vote, Kirby Smart, most outstanding coach of the SEC. He shall be Coach of the Year for the 2021 season.